Welcome back into. I never turned the music off, so hold on, let me do that. Welcome back into another edition of Prime Sports World. Teach, I missed one day and I fall apart here. Welcome back into Prime Sports World. I'm Coach, your host, David Hoffman. Right there is my co-host, Mr. TJ Hopkins. And today we're moving on with our NFC North season previews, swinging into the Motor City, talking about the Detroit Lions. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast as we bring you consistent content 24/7, 365. So thank you very much for checking us out as we are breaking down the Detroit Lions. And if you happen to miss any of our previous content, we've broken down all the teams in the NFC North so far outside of the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to do that tomorrow. And I know we said we were going to do a crossover episode yesterday, but I ended up staying long at basketball yesterday, and it was just too late to run a show. We'll jump back into that on Monday, so keep an eye out for that content. TJ, welcome to the show. Happy Thursday, my friend. How are you?
Same.
You gave a shout out to your brother yesterday or on Tuesday when we did the show then. It's good that he's home. Was it from Beirut, correct?
Bahrain.
Bahrain. So good that he's home safe. Thank you very much for his service. Hopefully, he knows that everybody here at Prime Sports World appreciates everything he's done for this country.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Detroit. Let's just jump right into their storyline. Let's not waste too much time. Let's talk about it. So the first time for a very long time, for as long as I can remember, Detroit Lions come into a season with some expectations. How do they manage those expectations?
I
know, coming out of the gate hot.
You gotta respond. I mean, it's literally the old the old Uncle Ben Spider-Man quote: with great power comes great responsibility. You're not looked at as quote unquote this laughing stock anymore.
Or at least not right now.
Or at least not right now. Like, you're looked at as a very respectable opponent, and you gotta back that up, right? Like, you're the favorite to win the division for the first time in what?
I mean, I can't remember. I don't think there's been a time in either of our lifetimes where they've been the favorite to win the division.
So think about that. Like, you're 30, what? 33?
I'm 55.
Okay.
As TJ likes to point out how old I am all the time.
All the time. But in all seriousness, like, you're 34, 35. I'm 29, and in our lifetimes, the Lions have never been serious anything.
As long as I can, there may have been a year that I just don't remember where they were low key the favorite, but I don't think that's a thing.
They have a year here and there. Like, you had that 1 year back in, I think, what was it? Was that 2012? No, I was in college when that happened. 2013, 14, like when they went to the wild card and they got screwed by Dallas.
Yeah.
And then the
Lions haven't won their division. Back then, it was still the NFC Central. They haven't won it since 1993.
93.
The NFC North didn't even exist the last time that they won the North. It was still the Central.
I wasn't born yet. Put it that way. And how do they manage these expectations? You got to first off state
another expectation. Dan Campbell's early favorite to win Coach of the Year as well. It's another expectation you got to manage.
Yeah, so like being humble is a huge what's the word I'm looking for? Like, be humble through this process. Yeah. There you go. Like, you can't get too big headed on this. Like, you had a decent season last year, but you still didn't win anything. Like, you didn't make the playoffs, you didn't qualify. I mean, like, I love the mindset that Dan Campbell had going into that Green Bay game. It's like, hey, if we're not going to the playoffs, damn it, they're not going to the playoffs either. Love that.
Yep.
I have no issue with that.
Me too.
But it's so you gotta just be humble. Like, just because you had a good season what you did last year holds no merit. They don't care. Right? Like it's on. It's
I
on
mean,
to the next.
not to mention the Lions now. They come in, and people are like, like it was like, oh, it's the Lions. So people are gonna be expecting to play you. Like they're probably circling this game on their calendar. Like, oh, the Lions are coming to town. It's not like, oh, the Lions are coming to town. Like, no, the Lions are coming to town. Like, we better take them seriously. Like, they're not going under the radar. They're not flying
It
under
used
anybody's
right.
radar.
It used to.
Like,
It used to be when you played the Lions, especially for our division. Hey, that's 2 wins right there. That was a guaranteed 2 wins. No matter how good Stafford was, no matter how good Megatron was, that was 2 wins that you could guarantee for your team if you were the Bears, Vikings, or Packers.
Right? So, but I also think they potentially had the right coach for this kind of like situation. I think Dan Campbell is one of the top 10-ish coaches in the NFL. Like, he just seems to get the most out of his play. Like, he seems to be a really good motivator. Yeah, he's come a long way. I mean, he's not biting up the kneecaps confidence anymore, but he seems to be a really good motivator of men. And like, so if people want to like get complacent, in fact, that like, oh, there is these expectations, like, oh, we're expected to win games now. I don't think Dan Campbell is going to allow the Lions to get complacent and just kind of go through the motions. Like, this seems like a guy who will motivate his guys to continue pushing for to be the best football players that they can.
Exactly. So like, yeah, I know he was a meme for God knows, at least that first season with the whole biting off kneecaps and because it's like, bro, who talks like that? You get what I'm saying?
Nobody talks like that.
It's like
shout out to Simon Miller from What Culture.
It's like who talks like that? Like, no one talks like that, dude. It's like, yeah, it's you're talking like no one, like it. Coach talk is just no. That was. Oh, we're gonna bite some kneecaps. It's like, no, dude, no one says that.
And I think he's done a good job of managing expectations. I think the best way you can manage expectations is to not to play the way you were playing before, like not to fall into the traps, not to fall into these trap games. You have to kind of keep playing as if you're being overlooked. Like you want to be the underdog story forever. You want to play with that chip on your shoulder. Play with that. Keep it going. Like that's the best way to manage those expectations.
Now, what they also got to understand is, all right, just like you had a good season last year, that means a harder schedule for the upcoming season.
Correct. So, actually, their schedule's not too bad for this particular season, but if they win the division, it for sure will be. As you know, they get lucky. They get kind of lucky that the fact that they get to play against the NFC South this season, which is probably the worst division of football. But let's swing over from expectations. Let's talk about the Jameson Williams suspension. Obviously suspended, I think, the first 6 games based on gambling. Gambling on the NFL. Take that conversation for whatever it is. Put that to the side. What do you make of his suspension? What do you think it's going to do to this offense? Like, I imagine that he was going to be a big part of whatever they're going to be doing in the passing attack this season, as he's kind of the guy who takes the top off the defense. A good compliment to Amon-Ra St. Brown. But now that element's no longer there for 8 weeks or 6? It's one of those two. What do you make of that suspension? How do you think they make up for that production? Or what they expected to be that production. And they kind of already addressed it a little bit this morning, trading for Denzel Mims, who's a guy who hasn't really panned out in New York, but does have a lot of intangibles that make him an opportune guy to be a good wide receiver in a new situation.
It is 6. Okay, it is 6 games. So 6 weeks, basically a month and a half for the season. You're not going to have your number 2 guy, however you want to phrase this. Like it's simple. Like, people don't like the fact that he's suspended, but it's the rules. You can't bet. You cannot do it. Like, his teammate Quintez Cephas, not only was he suspended, he was released.
I mean, you had Isaiah Rodgers for the Indianapolis Colts here. He was a promising 6th-round pick who was a good player last season. He gets suspended, done. His career's probably over. And
I ain't gonna go that far, but it's like,
Isaiah Rodgers' career is probably wrapped up.
Like, it's a rule. You cannot, you can't gamble. You represent at all point in times. You represent the team you play for and the shield. You can't do it. I don't care where you do it at. You cannot do it. I don't care what you're betting on. You can't do it. It's a rule. You can't do it.
The other thing that drives me crazy about like athletes betting on gambling on sports, like, don't you realize that, like, how much money you can make if you just don't gamble your money away? Like it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me personally, like, to gamble on a sport that you play and can make millions of dollars off of. You're gonna potentially throw that away in order to make a little extra money while gambling.
Like, it's dumb.
But with that being said, like, back to their offense, like, I'm sure they wanted, because he only had the one catch because he was off the ACL tear last year, one catch for 41 yards and a touchdown. I imagine he was planning to be a focal point of this offense. What do they do now?
I mean, I ain't gonna say keep the ship afloat because it ain't like it ain't like he ain't coming back.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 6 games. All the guys on the roster, they traded for Denzel this morning. You got Josh Reynolds on this team. Believe Rains was still a good football player. I'm going to say, obviously, I'm on Ross Brown. And they got brought back Marvin Jones Jr., who was a good football player when he was here. Spent one season in Jacksonville. Now comes back to where he played, I think, the full season in Detroit. And Marvin Jones gets a much different treatment now. When he was here, those 4 seasons that he spent some time in Cincinnati. That team didn't win a lot while he was there. I imagine that they'll be a little bit different now that he's in Detroit. Actually, he played 5 in Detroit. He actually spent more time in Detroit than he did in Cincinnati.
They've always had nice pieces. They just couldn't put it all together for whatever reason.
Defense.
Yeah, that too.
yeah. I just think that you guys, we like the cliche in sports, right? Next man up, somebody's gonna have to step up. So with the loss of James Williams, I mean, Josh Reynolds is gonna report, Khalif Raymond, Marvin Jones Jr. and this Denzel Minshew, I think, is super underrated.
Keep it going. I have to go check on something. I will be right back.
Okay, for sure. Moving on from there, let's talk about the last storyline. And we got the 2 expectations from their 2 young edges in 2023. 2 guys that were rookies last season. And we're talking about Aiden Hutchinson, who was the 2nd overall pick out of Michigan. He racked up 9.5 sacks, 3 picks, and 34 solo packs in his rookie season. I think he got picks against Aaron Rodgers. They ended up knocking the playoffs in. 2 sacks in that game. And then James Houston came on strong down the stretch last season. He's not even a rookie. I thought he was a rookie, but he was a 2020 draft pick. He was a 6th-round pick. But the dude had 8 sacks. I think he had most of them all within the last 8 weeks of the season. So a sack a week for 8 weeks. That's some serious production out of your linebacker position, outside linebacker, when it comes to Aiden Hutchinson and James Houston. Because what's great about having 2 guys that can put pressure out to the quarterback, you can't really double team either one of them because either one of those 2 guys can get going on either side. And then they also have, Charles Harris, who's been a journeyman guy who's kind of bounced around the NFL. At the other linebacker position, they got Levi Onuritsky. I don't know if that's pronounced right, but he's another right. Isaiah Buggs, Alan McNeil. Because the Detroit Lions have had a lot of time this offseason kind of addressing this defense. Because there was one major weakness of this football team. It had nothing to do with their offense. They have one of the best offensive lines in football. It's this defense. And to have 2 young guys combine for, 17.5 sacks in 1 year, that's pretty good value, especially from rookies who are expected to get better and better and better every single season. I just think the sky's the limit for these 2 guys. They could become one of the best edge rushing duos in the NFL. And I'm not sure the competition is all that fierce for that particular. I'm not sure a duo they almost feel like the best duo almost like to have in the NFL right now.
I ain't gonna go that far. You did it once.
I mean, it's kind of. I can't think of any other duo off the top of my head right now.
That's because you're not trying to think about it. No, you already know the expectation. You said what was that? What'd you say? 17.5 sacks from the 2
between
of them?
the 2 of them. Yep, James Houston and Aiden Hutchinson.
Do it again.
TJ likes to say, "Do it again."
Do it again. Like I'm not. I never label anybody top 10 anything off of 1 good season. Hell, I barely do it off of 2 good seasons.
It's true. It's true. Because you never gave Darren Waller his credit.
Like, no, bro, do it again.
But James Houston. So James Houston, for one, he had 8 sacks in 7 games last season. He had 3 sacks against the Chicago Bears, a game where he totally wrecked our game plan. He had 2 sacks against the Buffalo Bills. I mean, in 7 games, he racked up 8 sacks last season. And Aiden Hutchinson, really turned it on towards the end of the season. Pretty mediocre, pretty pedestrian stats. He was kind of feeling his footing in the first couple weeks of the season, outside of that Washington game where he had 3 sacks in that game.
Mm-hmm.
But after that Packer game, with the game where he had an interception, right? He had 1 sack, half sack, 1 sack, half a sack, and 2 sacks, which is all pretty good value. He had 3.5 tackles for loss in a game against the Jets, a game that won 20-17. I like this combination, this duo. I think they could be really dynamic this upcoming season.
Because I'm not putting this duo ahead of you got in the entire NFL. Like, did you just forget that Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack are on the same team?
I did, actually. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Did you forget what the guys that San Francisco has? Like, come on, man. Like, there's
fair, but they're in the top. They're in the top 5.
But you just said, like, I'm not even giving them that. Come on, do it again. No, I'm not giving them that. Not doing that.
So going to the internet. We're pulling up the internet. All right, so we got Jalen Phillips or Bradley Chubb. Would you rather have those 2 guys or?
That's what, down in Miami.
Detroit? Yeah.
Give me Bradley Chubb and yeah.
Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat. I don't think that's close. No,
that's not even close. Come on. That's
Bosa and Javon Hargrave, TJ Watt and Cam Hayward or Alex Highsmith.
That's not close.
Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith.
Not close.
All right, fine. I still think that Lions group is in the top 10. I'll backtrack a little bit, but I do think that duo is one of those duos we're going to be watching because they're both rookies, right? So they're going to grow up kind of together in the NFL. I think those are 2 duos to watch as we go forward in the National Football League, and it could find themselves in the top 5, even after this season potentially.
Mm-hmm. Do it again.
Moving on from the storylines, let's talk about their draft. Obviously, a kind of a shock pick where they traded back in the first round to take Jahmyr Gibbs, running back out of Alabama. They took Jack Campbell. Many people thought was what?
No, it's just a notification I got. It's about Washington. You'll see it in a minute.
Yeah,
you'll see it in a minute.
We'll talk about Washington when we actually get to their show. Jack Campbell, linebacker at Iowa. Many people felt it might have been a little bit of a reach. Both these picks actually a little bit of a reach in the first round. Sam Laporta, tight end out of Iowa in the second round. Brian Branch, safety out of Alabama, a pick that I personally love. Trading back up into the second round in order to take him should make them a better football team today. Hendon Hooker, a bit of a project at quarterback, coming off that ACL tear. I still really like the value of him in this because if doesn't get hurt in the season, he's probably a first-round pick. You get him in the third round, kind of stash him if you need to. Broderick Martin, defensive tackle out of Western Michigan, and then they took an offensive tackle out of William & Mary, and they took a wide receiver out of North Carolina, Josh Downs, his teammate, Antonio Green, wide receiver out of North Carolina. What do we think about their draft?
The Jahmyr Gibbs pick was very head-scratching, especially when you went out and signed David Montgomery in free agency. So it's like, what's the plan here? And you also, so as the depth chart is listed right now, Jahmyr Gibbs is starting over David Montgomery.
I think that's because Dave Montgomery has still dealing with some sort of injury.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure though, but
I don't know either. I also just got a bone to pick with David Montgomery because he said some stuff on his way out, and it's like, dude, you contributed to the losing. I just hope you know that. Like this, your last year in Chicago. I know you were upset about your contract. That's really what it is. But don't that's really what it is. Just that game against the Vikings on January 8th. That's 7 carries for 21 yards. That really helped us, dude. I think they got a steal in Jack Campbell at 18.
I I think he's going to be a good football player. And he does address a major area of need. He's the 2020 Buckets Award. Had 300 total tackles, almost 300 tackles in his college career. He's 6'5", 249 pounds.
He's immediate, like he's a day one. He's a day one starter, so he's like 100%. He's a day one starter.
And the other thing is, like, if you had not taken Jack Campbell here, he's not coming. He's not going to still be available at 34.
Whenever you're back on the board,
yeah. Like he was going somewhere in the first round. If you wanted a guy, if that's the guy that you pegged and you wanted, you had to take him there. Like you didn't have a choice. But at some point, I think you have to be comfortable with missing out on a guy. Like I think this team had other needs other than linebacker. I know this guy's going to be a day one starter, but I think they still had needed corner help. I know they addressed it in free agency, but I would have liked to take him taking a corner or even a defensive tackle. I just can't get behind this Jahmyr Gibbs pick. I just can't. I understand that basically they traded away DeAndre Swift right after this pick was made. I would have rather have just kept DeAndre Swift for one more season and taken something that you actually needed other than running back. I don't really love that pick. And he may be very valuable. I mean, he had over 2,000 yards and 1,200 yards rushing and 1,200 yards receiving between his stints at Georgia Tech and Alabama. He's a dual threat running back. He can do a little bit of the stuff that David Montgomery can't. And he can also play because they don't have a dominant tight end. I mean, whatever you think about Sam Laporta as a rookie, but he can give you some of that, escape blanket stuff on your roster. I just can't get behind that pick. I think you could have taken a running back later in this draft. I would have addressed the defense and continued to address it. Sam Laporta is also an interesting pick because the kid from Notre Dame was still on the board. I just don't understand taking Sam Laporta over him. But maybe they just have a thing about tight ends and Iowa and just the class of people that you're taking there. So,
well, Iowa can say if they wanted to, they say, hey, we're tight end. You George Kittle. TJ Hawkins, it's I mean, like for whatever reason, TJ Hawkinson didn't work there. Didn't work for whatever.
I mean,
reason.
It's not that it didn't work. They just realized that they were going to have to pay him this offseason. They were like, you know what? Let's get some value for him so we don't have to worry about paying him. That's exactly what it boiled down to.
It also didn't work.
I mean, he put up pretty decent numbers there in Detroit. It was just in Detroit, so nobody really noticed.
Define big numbers.
I mean, he probably had over. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but
I do.
Fantasy and somebody's DJ. I mean, he probably had over 600 yards receiving every season he was there.
Nope, not his first year. He only had over 600 yards receiving just 1 year. The next year. No, 2020. So 367, 723, 583, 395, and then he was traded to.
So you had 395 yards receiving before he got traded this season.
Before he got traded.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty good value. And then he played pretty good in Minnesota. But yeah, I mean the Sam Laporta pick, it does address an area in need. But when it boils down to, I think the best pick they made over all of their drafts is this Brian Branch pick. Yeah, trading back up into the second round and taking him. A dude that's going to be a day one starter. He was the best safety in this class. To get him in the second round is really just immense. Just really good manipulator of the draft board and really good value. I love Brian Branch. I think he could be a dark horse rookie defensive player of the
year. Yeah. The Hendon Hooker pick is what kind of got me. I understand like he was injured. Like if he doesn't tear his ACL, there's no way he's even
here. Yeah, he's not even available in the third round.
He's not even available. Somebody else gets him. Again, I just don't like the disrespect that Jared Goff is getting. Getting this guy, allows he's gonna sit obviously because he's not ready to play, but at some point in time, that means you're gonna move off of Jared Goff. When? Don't know. Could be next year. Could be the year after. Don't know. But why? Like, remember they were doing the mock drafts, and before we found out they were going to have a decent season, they was mocking like C.J. Stroud, to the Lions at 4 overall. We're like, I was like, why? Like, why do y'all act like Jared Goff is this bad quarterback? He's not.
He's not even that old. Like he's
not even that old. Jared Goff is like 2 years younger than me. Maybe a year younger now. Dude got to be like 27, 28. That's it.
I think he's 28.
Like maybe just turned 28. Like, yeah, why y'all act like I don't get it. you can literally play if you play your cards right and he stay healthy, and y'all help him. Y'all continue to do what you're doing, build around him. You can have Jared Goff for another 10 years easily. So like, you on the Jahmyr Gibbs pick, I'm on the Hendon Hooker pick. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. Do you what is it? You need a backup or something? Like if that's the case, you getting a backup dude who's not even going to be able to play.
It's true.
So what's the plan? Like I don't get that pick. I'm with you on the Brian Branch pick. I love that pick. The fact that he was still there at 45, and you could have easily made him your first round pick. You had 2 first round picks. You could have got him there.
But I also think that in Hendon Hooker, I think as the season progresses, as we get down, I think they're going to use him in like goal line gadget stuff. Like I think he'll have value this rookie season. I understand where you're coming from with the frustration of like Jared Goff is still young. He's still productive in the NFL. Why try to find his predecessor when he's still a young player and he's still under contract? But I think Hendon Hooker is going to have some value. I think he's going to be used in interesting packages this season. And I think the future, what they end up, because they're not going to have an opportunity to take a guy who has the talent of Hendon Hooker more than likely next season is a team that probably makes the playoffs. I mean, who knows what you're not usually getting a franchise guy in the 20s. And the fact that Hendon Hooker dropped into the 3rd round, who's probably
we already know why
guy
he
when healthy. Yeah.
We already know why he dropped. Like he tore his ACL. We already know why he dropped. So if that again, I don't like, or that's another thing. Like I understand, like they probably did it right then and there because it's like, hey, he's here. Nobody's gonna chastise us really for picking him right here. Like, can you imagine if they took him in the 2nd round with a torn ACL? Like, can you imagine if that happened?
Yeah, it would have been a tough sell.
Yeah. Well, super tough.
To the other guys on their draft class, Broderick Martin, 6'5", 337 pounds out of Western Kentucky. He started his season in Northern Alabama, then transferred to Western Kentucky. I'm gonna be straight up honest with you, I don't know a lot about him, but he looked good in the East-West Shrine game after a solid performance there. I'm not going to pretend to know a lot about this guy. The offensive tackle they took out of Williams and Mary is 6'6", 300 pounds, a behemoth of a man. Had 46 career starts at William and Mary. He's already 23.
This is a conversation this is a different conversation for another day, but I think ESPN and all those other sports networks, they have to do a better job at advertising the smaller colleges. Like the fact that you said like Broderick Martin was at Bama, then he transfers to Western Kentucky and pretty much just falls off the map.
Alabama. North Alabama.
No,
he wasn't at Alabama. He was already he was at.
So he goes from one. So he goes from one small school to another small school, and it's like,
correct.
This was and he turned that into being a 3rd round pick. I think these other networks, all the networks, should do a better job of highlighting these guys, because like the real talk, the only time they really get shine or they really get a spotlight is one when they play a school where we know that they finna get their ass kicked. Like a North Texas versus Alabama game or some shit like that,
or bowl Michigan loses,
or they get a massive upset.
Yeah, and then Antoine Green, the wide receiver out of North Carolina, he had 17 yards per catch per target last year, 4th highest in all of FBS. So that gives the Lions a vertical threat to field it until Williams returns when he's returned to back in week number 7. Moving on from there, let's talk about their free agency class. That's where a lot of the roster shakeup really came in. Obviously, notable additions: Dave Montgomery, Cameron Sutton, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley, and Graham Glasgow, guard, who recently played for the Denver Broncos, was at one point was supposed to be one of the centerpieces to the Russell Wilson trade. That ended up not being the case. And then key departures: DeAndre Swift, obviously they traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. Jamal Williams, who signed with the New Orleans Saints, and Mike Hughes, I think, signed with the Falcons. If I'm not really mistaken. He's a corner. Mike Hughes is in Atlanta. I was right. I should never doubt myself. What do we think? So, like, they had major needs in the secondary, and what do on the first day of free agency? They pick up Cameron Sutton. They give him a 3-year, $33 million deal from the Pittsburgh Steelers. They also get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's a really underrated player on a 1-year deal at the safety position, $1 million, $6.5 million. And then they get Emmanuel Mosley, who did get burnt a little bit as a member of the San Francisco 49ers, but he's automatically an upgrade over everybody else on their roster. And I think, I don't remember if this happened last offseason or this offseason. They also traded away Jeffrey Okudah. I feel like that happened this offseason.
That was this offseason.
So he should be on the list of departures. I just straight forgot about that trade because it happened forever ago. But replacing Jeffrey Okudah hasn't been good in the NFL. He's also been injured a lot with Emmanuel Mosley, with Cameron Sutton. I like what the Lions did with their free agency. I like Graham Gaskell. He's a good fringe gap position offensive lineman. Obviously, you don't necessarily need him to start because of how good your offensive line is already. But it's nice to have value.
Yeah, he's a backup. Like I was looking at their depth chart. Like I said, he's immediately a backup. They also got Jermaine Ifedi on this roster, who's a quality back. Like Jermaine Ifedi's been a starter in this league. He's like that. You can't ask for a better backup at the guard spot.
Yeah, so
you could.
That Okudah trade happened this offseason. So like it happened a couple months ago.
Like Buddy's solid.
In April.
Yeah.
They have arguably the best offensive line in football. It's like them and like the Atlanta Falcons. So they can each have the argument that they have the best offensive line in football. With Taylor Decker, Jonah Jackson, Frank Ragnow, Penei Sewell, and then Penei Sewell.
Yeah, brother. They got guys. They got hitters out there, man.
Yeah, I mean they got a really good offensive line, and for them to go out and address they found an area of need
and get better.
Our secondary wasn't good last season. Let's address it with some really good, proven players. You're talking about having a secondary of Cameron Johnson, Emmanuel Mosley, Brian Banch, C.J. Gardner-Johnson as your nickel. I mean, if you want to put C.J. Gardner-Johnson at safety, which is what his natural position is, I think he may play corner a little bit for the Lions this season. But I mean, this is an offensive. I'm not as concerned about giving up on a first-round pick in DeAndre Swift after just 3 seasons is tough. But I mean, you got to think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to give you something. And I
also think that it's something deeper than that. Obviously, stuff goes on in these organizations that we're not privy to, obviously. So when they traded him away, we're like, and it was a draft day trade. We're like, hold on, what?
Well, it happened actually right after the first round.
Yeah. Same thing. Same thing. Literally, it was during the draft. It happened. Obviously, when you look around your division and you see guys, you see the guys in your division, quote unquote, get better. So you see the Bears, they trade for DJ Moore. Claypool's still here. Mooney's coming back. Komet's still a solid weapon at tight end. Green Bay, they got a young duo that's nice. Quiet as kept, they got a young duo that's nice. Took them a little minute to put it all together, but it's nice. Christian Watson's probably they looking for him to take a big step forward. Romeo Doubs
is a good young player.
He's a good young player.
The kid from Michigan State that we talked about yesterday or on Tuesday should give them some depth at wide receiver as well. Yeah, I love what the Lions did with their free agency. I think Dave Montgomery's an upgrade over Jamal Williams. Whatever you think about that situation, I think Dave Montgomery gives you a little more intangibles than Jamal Williams does.
Just a little bit. I think he's a better.
It's close. Yeah,
it's definitely. I think he's a better pass catcher than Jamal Williams is. I think they're gonna miss his. How many? I forgot how many touchdowns Jamal Williams had.
12. I know he broke Barry Sanders' record last season. I think he had 12 touchdowns. That number may not be correct, so I apologize if it's wrong. But as a whole, I think when you look at their
17.
17. Oh yeah, I wasn't even close.
Yeah, 17.
When you look at their free agent class, back to their draft, also, I think I give it a solid B- when it comes to their draft. Back to free agency, I actually like what they did in free agency. I'm going to give them a solid A-.
I concur.
So into the schedule we go, and it starts off with a bit of a gauntlet there at the beginning of their schedule, outside of whatever you think about the Atlanta Falcons. But they start with a game against the reigning Super Bowl champions, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. TJ, how do you think that game's going to shake out? They gotta go. They gotta go to Arrowhead.
Oh, ring night. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, on Thursday night on ring night.
On ring night, that's tough. Yeah, give me the Chiefs. I mean, this is I said it during the Bears show. Like, this is a good barometer game. This is like a good game to see where you're at. Now, what you can't do is feed. Like, it's a good game to see where you're at, but you also got to remember, hey, this is the first game of the season, and a lot of Chiefs players. I don't expect a lot of Chiefs guys to, really play in the preseason a lot. Like, So, like, if they seem a little rusty, the Chiefs do, that's probably why. Like, I don't expect Pat Mahomes to play too much in the preseason. I expect
him enough to stay in rhythm. But, yeah, I agree with you. I think Patrick Mahomes this could be a feel-out game a little bit. Moving on, I expect Kansas City to win that game. Moving on from there, we got a little bit of a revenge game for the Detroit Lions. The loss they had last season to Seattle essentially cut them out of the playoffs. Which made their winning, they eliminate the Packers, but they had no chance of making the playoffs. They lose this game last season, 48-45. That game also in Seattle or in Ford Field in Detroit. TJ, a little bit of revenge for Detroit coming into this game. What do you think?
Could happen. This is Seattle. That's another team with young guys that is just gonna get that much better. So you got the two edge rushers in Detroit, while Seattle has two young tackles.
Yeah, Charles Cross and
they got two young tackles on both sides.
Charles Claus, who had his rough start to the regular season, but really turned into arguably one of the best offensive rookies of the year last season. Also, those Kingdom era jerseys are returning for the Seattle Seahawks, and that is great. Nice. I also really love the Indianapolis Colts the jersey they announced today too.
Them high school team drama jerseys, bro.
I like it, man. I like it. Moving on from there, they go the next game. They also stay at home. This time, the Birds of the Atlanta Falcons, back-to-back game against Birds. Atlanta Falcons coming to Ford Field. And TJ, this may shock you or surprise you a little bit, but I actually got the Detroit Lions beating the Atlanta Falcons. As highly as I think of them, I think Detroit is going to be even better than Atlanta. So I got them at 2-1.
So you got them beating the Chiefs and the Seahawks?
No, I have them.
You got them losing. Them losing to the Chiefs. Beating, Oh, you got them winning 2 in a row.
Correct.
I got them at.
And then after that, they go to
1-2. I got them at 1-2. I think Seattle beat them.
Okay, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they beat Seattle. Then the week after that, they go into Lambeau Field, taking on Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. We had a long conversation about Jordan Love in our most recent Packer episode.
I will go back and watch it.
They're aired on Tuesday. Go out and check out that content. I also had an old coworker of mine, Adam Dell, join the show as a diehard Green Bay Packers fan from Ohio. But Green Bay, going into Green Bay, I actually think the Detroit Lions will sweep the Packers this season, and I got them winning this game, even in Lambeau.
Them sweeping. I think it's gonna be a split home and home. I think Green Bay get them this game. I think they beat them in Detroit. So what am I at?
1-2. You're 1-3.
I'm at 1-3. Wow.
Yeah, it's tough.
I would love to be wrong about that Packers pick. Like, I legit think that's probably gonna be by the time when the game comes, I legit think that's probably gonna be like a pick 'em, like a 50-50.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. After that, Packers opponents of the NFC South. First, they welcome in the Carolina Panthers into Ford Field, and then they go on to Raymond James Stadium, taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. TJ, how do you see those two games shaking out?
They beat Carolina. Man, they went 2 in a row. They beat both of these. Oh, I ain't gonna, I can't be disrespectful to Tampa like that because I know Baker's the guy. But that's still Mike Evans. That's still Godwin. Like they beat Carolina for sure.
I agree with you on that take as well. I don't think they have much of a problem with the Carolina Panthers. As Carolina may end up being the worst team in the NFL, them and Arizona are going to be duking it out for that role. But I think they actually do beat Tampa Bay. I just don't think that highly of Tampa Bay. I just don't think they're going to be good enough.
I just think whoever has to go up against Tristan Wirfs, hey man, that's going to be a long day at the office. So
luckily, Donovan Smith is not walking through that door in Tampa Bay. They have not addressed that right tackle position. Not to mention, Donovan Smith wasn't good at all last season. So even if he was the right tackle, still, I just don't. I'm not sure what to make of Tampa Bay. I'm not sure what to make of their running game. I don't know what to make of their offensive line. I think their defense is taking a major step back. I think Carolina. I think Atlanta is the best team in that division by a long stretch. Tampa Bay loses that game to Detroit. I got Detroit at 5-1 before they go into Baltimore and get smacked by Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. I have them taking their second loss game here. I did not think they beat Baltimore in Baltimore.
Okay, I think you kind of swayed me. They're gonna beat Carolina. They're gonna beat Tampa. So that's 2 in a row for me. I got them at 3 and what? What's that? 3 and 4.
Yeah,
3 and 5 now because Baltimore finna beat their ass. I ain't gonna say beat their ass, but I ain't gonna say beat their ass, but Baltimore gonna win.
I just think that Baltimore game in Baltimore, that's a tough place to play, a tough place to travel to. Lamar Jackson plays a pretty unorthodox style of offense, and we don't really know what their offense is going to look like with all their weapons now. So give me Baltimore winning that game. And then they get back onto the winning ways when they go against the Las Vegas Raiders next week. The Las Vegas just seems like all sorts of mess. The quarterback situation seems like a mess. Their secondary seems like a mess. I have the Detroit Lions beating Las Vegas pretty soundly, getting back on the winning ways before their bye week.
Who's coaching the Raiders now?
Josh McDaniels.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, like Waller ain't walking through the door. You're probably gonna at some point lose Devontae Adams. Like that's gonna be tough. Like it's gonna be a long season for the Raiders.
I think the Jimmy Garoppolo saga is just so fascinating. Like because he still hasn't passed that physical, so they haven't technically signed him yet, and yet he still is his quarterback one. So
yeah.
It's just an interesting dynamic. But yeah, I think Las Vegas is going to be on the contention for one of the worst teams in the NFL next season. After their bye week, they go to Los Angeles into beautiful SoFi Stadium, take on the Los Angeles Chargers. And unfortunately, the bye week does them no favors. I think they lose to the Chargers. They got them falling to 6-3.
I agree.
And then they got back-to-back games against division foes. They welcome in the Green Bay Packers and Chicago Bears in back-to-back weeks into Ford Field. TJ, how do you see these two games shaking out?
I said they beat Green Bay in Detroit, so I'm not changing that. And I'm being a homer. They
You have the Bears going to Ford Field. You have the Bears going to Ford Field and winning that game.
Yeah, I'm being a homer. No, I think they beat. I think that's another home and home split.
I see the Detroit Lions sweeping the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. So I got the Detroit Lions winning both of these two games, and I have them at 8-3 going into the Bayou, taking on the New Orleans Saints. TJ, how do you see that game shaking out, where they go to New Orleans to take on the Saints and Derek Carr?
Is Michael Thomas playing?
I think that's a question you can ask almost every week for the rest of your life.
Because if he's not playing, then if he's playing, then obviously, I think this is the most talented. It's probably the most talented team Derek Carr has ever had. It's easily the best. It's easily the best defense he's ever had.
I don't think that's even close.
It's not. Again, like his entire time with the Raiders, they never had a top 20 defense. But yeah, it was somehow his fault. His fault that they lost everything.
With that being said, I think New Orleans is such a wild card. I don't think we're going to know what they're going to get from them, especially like from week to week basis. I see Detroit beating New Orleans, going down to the Bayou and beating New Orleans Saints. I do think that'll be a close game. I think it'll be tough, but I have the Lions beating New Orleans.
I think New Orleans has the defense to make their lives make their life tough. Again, you add Jamal Williams, he knows this team. So yeah.
And then after they go to the Bayou, they got to go into Chicago, take on the Bears at Soldiers Field. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, I have them sweeping the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. I'm not going to veer away from that. I have the Lions beating the Bears and moving to 10-4 record-wise.
No, they lose to Chicago.
10-3. Sorry, 10-3.
They lose to Chicago. I'm sorry.
I win that game.
I think they sweep the entire NFC South though. I think they sweep that whole division.
I agree with you on that. Actually,
I could see it. I think like I think the only team that could like beat them out of the NFC South is the Saints. Would I be surprised?
I actually think it's the Falcons, but
that's fair. I mean, I like the quarterback situation I like the quarterback situation in New Orleans way more than I like it in Atlanta. Derek Carr, Desmond Ridder, give me Derek Carr.
I'm not arguing with her. I just think Atlanta as a whole football team, I think, is more talented than New Orleans. From there, let's talk about they're going Denver Broncos coming into Ford Field. And TJ, how do you see that game shaking out? Russell Wilson versus Jared Goff, two teams that used to sling it out in the NFC South or NFC West. Sorry, now doing battle as interdivisional foes.
You go first.
I am actually I know I've been a little bit of a Detroit Lion homer here with all the picks that I made that have the win, like, all these games against Green Bay and the Chicago Bears. But I think this is one of those games where I think Denver gets this one. I think that offense in Denver should be better. They addressed the offensive line in the offseason. They added Sean Payton, who should, make this offense a little bit more dynamic. I think you already had a really good defense, dynamic defense. I got Denver winning this game.
I think that's the move that gets them over the top, right? Like, you obviously, Sean Payton is Sean Payton. Like, this guy, for whatever his past transgressions may be, he's still one of the greatest offensive minds that's ever stepped on the NFL sideline. I think that's the move that folks are hyping, and for obvious reasons, right? I agree. Oh, I just don't know. Like, it's not like this. The Bronco defense is trotting out. Von Miller's not walking through that door, so they got other question marks.
Yeah, but I mean, this defense was good enough to basically carry a woeful. Like, it was at one point that last season where the Denver Broncos could have scored 15 points or more in every game this season. They would have had like 10 wins.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Give me the Lions in a close one.
I do think that game will be relatively close. And then the next week they go up against two NFC playoff teams from a year ago. First they go to Minnesota, and then they go to Dallas on this little mini road trip to kind of wrap up the season before they end the season. Minnesota coming to Ford Field. But Minnesota, Dallas back-to-back, both games on the road. How do you think those two games are going to shake out?
Same thing. I think they split with Minnesota, so they lose here. They lose here. They beat Dallas. I'm
going to agree with you that I think they lose to Minnesota in Minnesota. I just can't. I don't think they're at the level of a Dallas Cowboy team. And regardless of what they'll look like at this point of the season, we're taking them with full strength. I like the Dallas Cowboys. I know they lost Bobby Schultz's cousin, Dalton Schultz, in the offseason, but I still think that they're a pretty good roster and a pretty good football team. Dallas is kind of like a question mark at times, but this defense should be excellent next season. Give me Dallas.
They had them last season. Jamal Williams don't fumble on the 2 early in the game. Like, that's a different game, because now it's like, hey, we hanging in there with the Cowboys, and that fumble kind of killed morale a little bit. If you like, if you get my drift.
I do not actually disagree with you. I'm gonna go with my gut here, and I think that Dallas will win that game.
Also, this is the second year in a row they play in Dallas. That's not fair. That's not fair
That's
at all.
right. That is not fair.
First of all, who do they play on Thanksgiving? What's their Thanksgiving game?
I think they play against Green Bay, right? Yeah, I think Green Bay. They play against Green Bay in Thanksgiving. No. Yes. They play Green Bay on Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Our buddy Adam Dell, who's on the show on Tuesday, he's going to that game. He's going to be there live. So good for him. And then the final game of the season, I have Detroit Lions sitting right now at 10-6. And then they welcome in the Minnesota Vikings in a game that could potentially be for the division. I think whoever wins this particular game will be the division winner. I think the other team will be a wild card. I have Detroit beating Minnesota to win the division. Or I don't know. We'll see what the record ends up shaking out like for Minnesota tomorrow. But I have Detroit finishing the season 11-6. That should be good enough to make either win the division or be a wild card team.
Wild card. I think they do right what they did last season, 9-8, 10-7. Would I be surprised if 11-6 happened? Absolutely not. But I think they do right about what they did last season. This ain't hate. This ain't none of that. I just think that when they play some of the guys on the schedule, some of the teams on the schedule, I think they worry about the names across the way versus what they got going on. So, like, again, first game of the season is against the reigning Super Bowl champs, right? On ring night. How do you handle those first 3 drives of the game? Because if Kansas City come out the game and they score on their first 3 drives, touchdown, that's 21 points right there.
Yep. At that point, the game would be over.
At that point, the game with Seattle shocked everybody last season.
And this is a Seattle Seahawks team that put up 48 points against you last year. It's a game where you scored 45 points and lost.
And you lost.
So
like you scored 40. Like that means hey, you scored 45 points, and most times in the NFL, when you score 45 points, that's a blowout dub. You lost, right?
Yeah, that's true.
You got the Chargers, who again, Justin Herbert, one of these dudes that they want to crown. They want to make Justin Herbert one of these guys, right? Justin Herbert is out to prove that he's one of these guys, right? Russell Wilson, revenge season, it's happening. Yeah. So.
Dak Prescott wants to continue to prove that he's worth that contract. I mean, the pressure's going to be on even more than ever with Ezekiel no longer being.
I ain't even bring up Lamar.
Yeah. We'll see. I have the Detroit Lions at 11-6. I have them making the playoffs. We'll see how things end up shaking out for Detroit. This is a very important season, I think, for Detroit and for Dan Campbell, the coach of that team. How things end up shaking out there in Detroit. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to be doing the Minnesota Vikings show tomorrow, so keep an eye for that content. I'm David Huppin. Right there is Mr. TJ Hopkins. And TJ, besides telling people to subscribe to the podcast, what do we do here at the Prime, my friend?
We bring the heat.
Yes, sir. And we'll be back here tomorrow breaking down Minnesota. Y'all have a good night and stay safe out there. Peace out, brother.
Oh, and the new